Hello everyone, my name is Brianna Emmendorfer, and for my final project I decided to go into endangered species, but specifically talk about the leatherback sea turtle. The whole reason I kind of got into this program of conservation management is because I've always loved animals, and I thought it would only be appropriate to talk about endangered species for my final project, since that's what I would ultimately like to work with. So here we have the leatherback sea turtle. They are the largest sea turtle in the world. They can weigh anywhere from 600 to 1,100 pounds, and they are between 4 to 6 feet long. They are the only sea turtle that does not have a hard shell. So instead of a hard shell, they have what they call a carapace, which is thousands of tiny bone plates covered in a thin layer of leathery skin. So it's not smooth, but it's got a more leathery texture, which is where their name comes from. They feed mostly on jellyfish, as they have a soft jaw. It's pretty fragile, so if they tried to eat anything harder than that, they would most likely break their jaw. They also eat seafood and small crustaceans that really don't need to be chewed, so they could just swallow it. Their habitat is actually quite a large range. They've been found as far north as Alaska and as far south as the southern tip of Africa. And they also can live in waters less than 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the coolest temperature that any reptile is known to be in. But considering their habitat range, they can withstand a wide range of temperatures, which is pretty interesting. So unfortunately, all 7 sea turtle species are endangered. But the leatherback seems to have the lowest numbers of any of the sea turtles. In 1982, it was estimated that the global population was about 115,000 individual sea turtles. By 1996, it was estimated that there were only 30 to 40,000 individuals left, which is quite a decline in just 14 years. In the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, the population numbers have decreased the most in the last 40 years, and it is estimated that there are only about 2,300 egg-laying females left in the Pacific Ocean. So some of the threats against the leatherback sea turtle. One of their largest threats is pollution. Considering they almost exclusively eat jellyfish, which are in high abundance, the problem here is that pollution floating in the ocean tends to look like jellyfish. So balloons, plastic bags floating in the water, they're easily mistaken for jellyfish, and they end up eating them or trying to eat them. It's one of the main reasons that this species is on the endangered species list, as it causes many problems for them, and oftentimes they aren't found to be treated. Another reason that their population numbers are decreasing is because this species tends to get tangled in fishing nets and caught by commercial fishers quite often. So the case study that I found actually discusses fishery management. It's the way that this group of scientists believes is the best way to manage this species and to, help increase their population numbers by what their goal is to decrease the amount of times that they are caught by fishermen. So they use a product called Turtle Watch, which can tell them the turtles' depth in the water, their exact location, so they can monitor where they're at, how fast they're moving, all of those things that are important to, monitor the species. The product was produced by NOAA to reduce the incidence of turtles getting entangled in fishing equipment. In this case, with this specific case study, they were studying around the North Pacific. So one of the recommendations that this case study also had was to put a cap on the amount of incidents, as they call it, or run-ins with the turtles, as they were calling it. So say they would set a limit of 16 incidents with the sea turtles per year. Once the fishery had that many incidences, then they had to shut down. Not necessarily the whole fishery, but in this case, this fishery was fishing for swordfish. So, in this particular area of the ocean that they were hunting for the swordfish, if they, had incidents, either sea turtles getting caught in nets or whatever it may be, sea turtles interacting with any of the fishing equipment, fishermen, if it were more than 16 times, they would have to shut down for the year, and they wouldn't be able to resume operations until the following calendar year. So the leatherbacks, as most species, offer some kind of ecological importance in their habitat. The leatherbacks obviously do as well. One of their qualities is that since they eat so much jellyfish, it's the majority of their diet, they keep the jellyfish populations in check. If there are too many jellyfish in a certain area, they eat smaller fish, smaller crustaceans, and those fish populations would decrease if there are too many jellyfish in the area because there are not enough leatherback sea turtles to eat them. This species, along with most of the sea turtles, provide income for coastal communities through tourism. So without, the leatherback sea turtles in certain communities, they won't be seeing as much tourism. And through tourism, these communities make most of their money, restaurants, hotels, things like that. So they would see a large decrease in their, the money that they're producing. So one of the ethical dilemmas I had with this specific thing is that tourism is important. It brings in a lot of money, but it also really hurts the areas. It can really hurt the areas that are high tourism spots, especially for these sea turtles. These sea turtles nest on beaches. So the females go up to the beach, they dig a hole and lay their eggs in it, and then they leave. So their nests aren't guarded. And when the hatchlings come up out of the sand to go to the water, they are very vulnerable. If there is high tourism and the areas where these eggs are laid aren't protected, the eggs themselves can get eaten or damaged, and then when the hatchlings come up to go to the ocean, they can also be killed or taken, different things like that. My issue is that isn't it kind of selfish to say that the communities need the turtles for tourism, but the tourists are the ones that are responsible for declining populations? That's just a thought that I had. I thought it was somewhat selfish. I mean, they do rely on each other, but with such rapidly declining population numbers, shouldn't the sea turtles have the advantage here? The Endangered Species Act was created in 1973 to protect and conserve endangered species and their habitats. It requires federal agencies to work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA to ensure that any actions that are authorized do not interfere with the well-being of any threatened or endangered species or their habitats. It also prohibits anyone from physically taking any of these species for any reason. So, what has the Endangered Species Act done for the leatherback sea turtle? Well, it was listed as endangered in 1970 as part of the Endangered Species Conservation Act, which became the Endangered Species Act in 1973, where the turtles were still listed as endangered. Under this act, there have been areas listed as critical habitats for this species. The areas include Sandy Point in St. Croix and its surrounding waters, and 2 areas off the coast of Oregon, Washington, and California. These critical habitats are chosen if they contain elements that a species needs for survival or if the species occupies an area for an extended period of time. So the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, or CITES as most people know it, this convention was created in 1963. to protect any endangered animal or plant species from being captured, killed, or traded. And this includes every part of an animal or plant in any state, whether it be alive or dead or just a piece of an animal, such as an elephant's tusk. This is an international agreement that countries voluntarily abide by. Essentially, it provides a framework that adds onto any existing federal laws that include endangered species. So, what does CITES provide for the leatherback sea turtle? Well, CITES has all 7 sea turtles listed as endangered. They're all very vulnerable to environmental change. All sea turtles are illegal to collect, kill, or trade under CITES. While this has helped, there are still those that are illegally taken, as it does not provide very strict rules, and it is international instead of being on a specific country level. They're currently pushing for more regulations for the sea turtles, as well as better monitoring of the population. How can the Endangered Species Act be improved? I personally thought that while the Endangered Species Act is wonderful, it provides lots of information for people that don't necessarily know much about this topic. It could also be more strict with its policies. So specifically to the leatherback sea turtle, it could be more strict about the protected areas. An area that is protected because an endangered species land is protected, but they are not monitored strictly enough. Heavier monitoring of these areas would decrease the chances for people to take these animals or ruin their habitats. Land ethics describes a sense of community, but including all species and elements of the earth instead of just humans. This is similar to care ethics in that we should care about all species and elements of the earth as we do our neighbors. We should consider land ethics in everything that we do. Land ethics describe the responsibility that we owe the natural world, especially considering the damage that we have caused and the fact that we owe the natural world restoration. So, that is my proposal on the leatherback sea turtle. I think they're a great species that is definitely important, and considering their rapid decline, could definitely use stricter policies and just more knowledge, more people learning about them, learning what they need, and learning how they could, care for them and get their population numbers back up. So, thank you.